Ninja chat.
Oh, yes, that is true.
Wonder if YouTubers, like the YouTube developers, refer to it as the Ninja Chat. That would be so awesome.
I don't know. Maybe. Seems like a pretty easy jump to make.
Yeah, well, I mean, somebody put a ninja there, so
They called it the Ninja Chat before they put the ninja there.
Maybe. Okay, get that up. Let's see. Ryan, it amazes me how much how more smooth my typing has become since I switched to a mech board. My fingers feel much more confident.
This is true.
I don't know if I'm actually making any fewer errors, but I feel much more confident in my typing. It's like the Donald Trump effect.
Yeah, try some tactile switches. Maybe it'll get even better.
I like the smoothness though. It's like typing on butter.
I like typing on blue switches. I'm not a huge fan of typing on reds.
I like the reds. Apart from when I lay my hand on the keyboard and accidentally engage a key forever. That sometimes
I like reds for gaming. So
I actually don't get too much out of them from gaming that I wouldn't out of a normal membrane keyboard, I don't think. But maybe it depends on the types of games you play.
Yeah, reds were originally developed for gaming. They're one of the more recent cherry switches.
For gamers.
Yeah, they were like, we need a light linear switch that we could sell to gamers. And so they invented the red.
Sorry, Scott. I'm sorry you would have totally missed this. Yeah, we switched it, and we're not advertising the live show too heavily in advance anymore. But we had to switch because of my schedule. I'm not here tomorrow. It's always my schedule. I'm sorry. This podcast is very me-centric. And I apologize to everyone. Okay.
Yeah.
Restart the recording. So we're going to talk about tablets. I think that a good place to start is should we go semi-chronologically? I have a basic understanding of the Android.
It's always fun to reminisce about the Zoom.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm talking even.
What about the OG Galaxy Samsung Tab?
Yeah, that
what was it?
Tab 7 or
Yeah, the
Samsung,
no,
yeah.
just the Galaxy Tab, wasn't
I think
it?
It's just the Galaxy Tab.
Yeah,
the
it
original.
depended on market. All right, we'll get into it. I've got the Wikipedia page up here. Okay, so welcome to the Android Police podcast, and this week we are talking about Android tablets because, well, that's how I'm introducing the show this week. I'm David Ruddick.
I'm Ryan Whitwam.
I'm Cody Toombs.
I'm Jordan Palmer.
And I'm Corbin Davenport.
I'm so happy somebody decided to go first. It was
I
getting
was waiting to
tense.
see how that was going to
I was
shake
just
out.
thinking, oh wait, we didn't go over what order.
I was going to go with alphabetical, but whatever.
Keeping things interesting. So
That's what I do.
this week's topic is tablets, and we're going to talk Android tablets because, well, Android tablets are always good for I don't know, like a kicking around. Is that how you would describe discussing Android tablets? But so imagine way back, if you will, just far, far into the yonder, and by that I mean around 7 years ago. The first major Android tablet was actually 6.5 years ago. I'm sorry, I lied. The original Galaxy Tab was unveiled by Samsung at IFA in Berlin. It was called the Tab or the Tab 7.0, depending on the market you were in, and it ran Android 2.2 when it came out. Though I believe when it came out in the US, I thought I could have swore it had gingerbread.
It was gingerbread in
I think
the
it
US.
did,
I
yeah.
remember that.
Yeah. Okay, so it might have had Froyo in some other countries initially. So the specifications on this thing, And this really is the first major Android tablet. So this is where it all started. It had a Exynos 3110, which is the Hummingbird processor that all those Galaxy phones had in 2010. 512 megabytes of RAM, or in some markets, 444. I don't know why. 2 gigabytes of memory. And then there were also apparently 16 and 32 gigabyte models. I would bet those were for Korea. Would not be surprised in the least. And it had a 7-inch display, as you probably remember, with a 1024 by 600 resolution, that high res, 170 ppi.
God.
So good. And it had 2 cameras as well. It had a rear and front camera, which I think for a tablet at the time was
Weird.
Yes, it was.
The iPad didn't have the rear camera at that point.
It also had a pretty big battery for the time. I'm quite surprised looking at this. It had a 4,000 milliamp hour battery. That's quite hefty for 2010, considering most phones were rocking 1,500 to 1,800 milliamp hour batteries at the time.
Yeah,
but they had the space.
That's true. So that was really where Android tablets got their start. And if I recall correctly, the Samsung Galaxy Tab was terrible.
Yeah.
It was.
It was pretty bad.
Real bad. A friend of mine had one. Like for some reason, his job bought him one, and he never touched it. It was awful. I used it a couple times, and I couldn't even believe that was a thing that Google approved. I mean, like the home screen was completely broken. The stock home screen, none of the widgets fit because Samsung changed the grid size to match, the sort of the larger screen than a phone had, but none of the widgets worked. Like you would put the Samsung widgets on there and you would have to I think it was 5 wide, but the widgets were all 4 wide. So like nothing lined up right. And it was just, it was just real bad.
Yeah, I remember that apparently it was painfully slow, and the lack of optimized apps was just ruinous.
Yeah. I mean,
that hasn't changed.
It's not changed much, but
No.
yeah, I mean, it was even worse then. I mean, you would be lucky if you would, start a game and it would understand the screen at all.
My favorite piece of specification information from the Wikipedia page for this tablet is it says, so developer, manufacturer, blah, blah, blah. And then it says type, phablet. It is a tablet, sir. It is a tablet.
Oh, jeez.
It was a definitively
Remember
the
that, like the big thing everybody was doing at that time was trying to find some way to hack abilities onto their tablets. For no sane reason, that was like such a big thing.
Yeah, I do recall this. But that was kind of where Android tablets got their start, and this was totally unendorsed by Google. Google was probably like, "Please no, don't. We're not
This
ready."
is awful.
I mean, well, they had to pass it through Google to get the Google apps. So like somebody at Google thought this was
Well,
an
yeah,
okay
I'm
enough
sure
idea.
it passed compatibility, and Google's like, "Well, I guess we."
Yeah,
have
yeah,
to."
obviously they didn't have as many rules back then, but I can't believe Google was like, this seems like a good idea. We should definitely let Samsung do this.
Yeah, and it was pretty terrible, and but it went to show how hot the idea of a tablet was at the time. All of the major U.S. carriers stocked this thing. They were super interested in it.
Anything to sell an extra data plan.
Yeah, apparently, and that was back when the data plans were far more expensive for add-on devices. So the Tab, in retrospect, though, was pretty minor blip in Android tablet history. We didn't really start getting into the good stuff until Android 3.0, which does anybody remember when that was first initially unveiled?
Yes.
I remember the announcement.
Do you remember the Honeycomb trailer is still on the Android YouTube channel, and I've watched it a few times, and every time I watch it, I'm sitting there looking, this is so much better than Android on tablets now. All these apps look great.
Oh, because the like most of the promo shots were like widgets, and then like the crazy like 360 grid YouTube app, and
Yeah.
they had all these cool concepts. Let's see if we can throw up is the screen share thing broken? No, it's not. The application window thing maybe is. So if you can see there, this is one of the promo shots that Google used, I think, pretty extensively that shows the widgets especially.
Oh, that clock. I loved that clock.
The Tron clock.
Oh, man. I mean, yeah, as a huge Tron fan, I just loved that clock. It was one of the things I was obsessed with getting on my phone at the time.
But they wanted they had a Zoom that was like the launch device for Honeycomb, and they wanted such an insane amount of money for it that I don't know why they thought it was going to work.
Very expensive. I do recall that.
Yeah, like the Verizon one, I think it was $100 or $150 more than the base model, which I think was $500, and then it didn't have LTE. Like they were like, no, this is an LTE tablet, but it doesn't have it yet. Just later, we'll give you the LTE. It'll just be a quick upgrade, and then when the upgrade happened, like 8 months later, they're like, actually send us the tablet for a week, and we'll install the modem and send it back.
I wonder, did anybody ever like do a teardown of that, like showing how, like, because I'm still befuddled. Like they had to like physically tear apart the tablet, like place this little LTE module in there, solder it in.
I mean, it must have had a slot or something on the board for them to put that in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Watching this video here promoting Android 3.0. This is one of the concept videos.
It had a lot. I mean, it had a lot of good ideas.
Whoa, books.
There were.
Yeah. So many books. Google was huge into carousels at this time. They were all about carousels in the widgets, in the apps, everywhere. Carousels for everybody.
I mean,
the Play Store was a mess with them.
Oh yeah, it was. But I do miss the nav bar that they had at the time.
Yeah, that's my biggest issue with newer versions.
I liked that, and I liked the status bar too. That bring up the notification shade in the corner.
Putting everything across the bottom, where I mean, everyone's heard the ergonomics argument a million times, and it's absolutely true. It just made so much sense to have the notifications down there, because reaching across the tablet screen to pull down wasn't a good experience.
Well, and I liked having the nav buttons onto the one side where you had either one of your fingers, left, I believe. So I mean,
now they kind of do that again, at least on some devices. Like the Pixel comes with, with the back and home button way over in one corner, and then the overview button way over in the other, which is kind of weird. But I mean, it's still more comfortable to use than this, the standard center layout that we have on most things.
It's just a pain. Unless you have a small tablet.
Yeah, like the Nexus 7.
Oh yeah, like it was fine on the 7, but anything bigger, it just got...
Nexus 7. Back when phones were significantly smaller.
Yeah.
I just remember shoving gingerbread on my nut color. That was my tablet back in the day.
Oh yeah, that thing was hacked to hell and back.
That was a fun tablet. I enjoyed that thing.
Yeah, I really wanted a Nook color when that was out.
And then Barnes & Noble locked it down on the Nook tablet, so it was a less popular device.
Yeah, my first technically Android device was the Nook Simple Touch, and it was like this 6-inch ePad thing, but under all of Nook's skins, it ran Android 2.1, I believe.
Yeah.
And someone made a root on XDA, and you could put the full Play Store and everything. So I had Angry Birds on it. I got Google Play Books on there, obviously. I even had Firefox, maybe? I don't know. That was really fun to play around with. And it still works, actually. I have it around here somewhere. I'm not sure where. But yeah, that was fun.
It was that, and then the other one that was super, super popular for modding was the HP touchpad.
I had one of those too.
I had one of those as well. I mean, I think when they had the fire sale, I think a lot of people bought
the legendary $99 fire sale.
Yeah.
Yes,
I remember I had to add a ream of paper to get the sale price. I don't know why, but that was the thing. I was like, okay, HP, give me the paper and the tablet, please.
I remember, a lot of times with both the Nook and the touchpad, for a while there, you would find them on eBay with custom software pre-installed, and people they charged a premium for this. The software is pre-hacked on there with an SD card that was in the tablet or whatever. I think in the touchpad especially.
Yeah,
that was a thing.
But, shortly after the touchpad sale, after that happened, was when Amazon announced the first Kindle Fire, and everybody was like, "Oh my goodness, a $200 Android tablet! We should all buy this." And it was a thing. It was not terrible, I guess.
Yeah, but the first one was really slow. I do remember that.
It was slow. Yeah, but I mean, at the time, a $200 tablet, like you were willing to put up with a lot of stuff because everything was still really expensive. Like $500 was the default price for just about any tablet.
Yeah, and that was to cite a source here, November 2011. So that's actually I didn't realize they were that old, but that was in the USA. They came out in mid-November.
Wow. I remember I pre-ordered that. I was like super jazzed for it at the time, and like and it was like a good size for reading, and that was like one of Amazon's main use cases for it. And then other 7-inch tablets started coming out. Like, was it 2012 that we got the first Nexus 7?
Yeah.
That was like the first Android tablet that was like, hey, this could actually be a thing I would like to use.
And the first Nexus 7 had a Tegra 2 or is it a Tegra?
I think Tegra 3.
3. Okay.
I think it was Tegra 3 because my first
the Tegra 2s were in the phone.
Well, the first round of Android tablets were all Tegra 2. The Honeycomb tablets were.
Yeah, to rewind a bit to those, the initial Android tablets, all the Tegra 2 processors were terrible.
Yes, they were not fast. I think that's a thing that happened with a lot of NVIDIA's chips back in the day. They would always talk about how great the specs and the architecture was, but when you actually try to use a device with them, they were just dog slow.
Yeah. So I remember, so this will always stick with me because this was like a traumatic experience for me at Android Police. It was like the first time I had reviewed a tablet, and like I was still like,
I think this is the Toshiba story.
Not super bitter. So I got this Toshiba Thrive, and everybody on the podcast has heard the story before, but I'm going to tell it again because it was that good. So the Toshiba Thrive was this super thick. I mean, it made the zoom look like pretty svelte. This super thick tablet had a bunch of ports on. It had like a full-size HDMI and 2 USB ports, and it was basically a laptop without a keyboard. It was also 100% plastic, so you could like flex it and the whole thing would twist in your hands. Pretty good stuff. And it ran Honeycomb, and it had Tegra 2 processor, I believe, and it was just very standard. The actual technology inside pretty standard reference stuff, but the cool thing about the tablet, as far as everybody who wanted was concerned, was all these extra ports. Because people this time were really getting into the idea, oh, tablets are going to replace laptops. That narrative was like really getting a lot of hype. And so this Toshiba tablet was like, people were very excited about this device because they're like, oh, it's got all the ports and it's got to use my laptop with my keyboard. And so
that's actually what everybody in our comments sounds like when they talk in real life.
It is. And so I use this thing and I'm like, wow, it's a piece of shit. It was. Like, thinking back, it was an absolute piece of shit. It was a bad tablet. Honeycomb was super slow on it. It was buggy. It was badly put together. Like the I/O ports, like the stuff worked, but barely. It worked as in like, yeah, you could put a USB drive in this and theoretically transfer files over from, into the tablet, but why would you? And anyway, it was also expensive. And so I wrote a review and I forget what the initial title was. It was not nice, but I was basically like, wow, this tablet fucking sucks. And, every Toshiba Thrive fanboy from every corner of the internet rushed in to basically just call me a terrible person. And I felt so bad about it. I was like,
oh my gosh. I looked up a picture. That thing's massive.
It is huge. And I felt so bad about it. And like the comments just kept coming. Like it was brutal. And eventually Artem was like, listen, you gotta deal with it. And I was like, I guess I can rewrite it. And so we unpublished the original review and I rewrote it to be less mean. Which in retrospect, like I shouldn't have done that. I regret doing that. I should just let it stand as what it was. Anyway, rewrote it, was less mean. I think it was still overall negative because it wasn't a good tablet. But then the response wasn't nearly as mean. And then like a year later, Ron reviewed the Galaxy Note 10.1, put in the fucking trash. And I was like, why the hell did I rewrite my review?
Yeah, that picture at the end with the tablet box sitting in the trash, it really, Samsung did not like that.
Yeah, they did not. So all those Android Honeycomb tablets that came out at that time were all pretty much the only good one. And I forget if this actually had, I think it did have Tegra 2, was the original Galaxy Tab 10.1 because it was by far the thinnest and it had like the best bezel to screen ratio of all of them out there. People were stoked on that tablet, and I think rightly so. Like it demonstrated like the limit of the technology at the time.
And that's the one I had. And it was light. It made even iPads seem like heavy and unwieldy. So
Which
it was a great tablet. Yeah, they really were. I will throw in, there was one other tablet that held its own pretty well, but it was the one that did what Toshiba was trying to do correctly, and that was the Asus Transformer.
Yeah,
that's
It was a
I
justified
had
fan
a
base for that.
Transformer. That was I mean, that was a good tablet for the time.
That was my first like real Android tablet because the e-reader one didn't count, and I really liked it because I had the keyboard attachment, so I just used it as a laptop replacement because I kind of bought into the whole tablets are going to be laptop replacements, so I used it for school and everything, and it had the same issue with the Nexus 7 2012 where the memory just slowed down over time. Like it got to the point where I would flash, like I would wipe it, I'd flash clean CyanogenMod. There's nothing on this tablet. It's still incredibly slow, and I got so mad.
Yeah, I remember when it became apparent there was a problem with the Nexus 7's memory. Everybody had like some sort of voodoo idea about how you would make it better.
Like
use
no, all you have to file system.
Like all you have to do is just like completely write over the memory, make it completely full, and then delete everything.
Yeah.
And
So
and then delete battery stats 3 times and sacrifice a chicken.
In story time, I still have my original 2012 Nexus 7, the white one that they handed out at Google I/O.
It's a super special one.
It's totally dead. The NAND failed, which they did on all of them. But like, I can't like e-waste this thing. Like, it's got private data that's not encrypted on the eMMC chip. Yeah. Like, what if somebody? I mean, it's a pretty low chance, but I feel a little bit paranoid about throwing it out.
I mean, you could just like pop the back off and just smack it with a hammer.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I could do that.
Yeah.
A little lazy to do that. I also have a Nexus 7 2013 that suffered the same fate that is sitting also in the same box.
I mean, that's what I do when I have a piece of electronics that is no longer worth selling and I need to get rid of it and I know it has stuff on it. I just hit it with something heavy.
Yeah. And so at this point, I think after the Honeycomb experiment, which was largely a failure in the market, at least, I think the concepts were interesting. Google decided, never mind. And so the Nexus 7 2012 came out, which had Android 4.0, I believe, right?
I think it was 4.1.
Oh, no, it was Jelly Bean. So that was, okay, I remember.
Oh, yeah, no, there was the ice cream sandwich era where that was like the one that brought the tablets and phones back together.
Yeah.
Because Honeycomb, I think...
Well, it was the same OS, but they still hadn't messed with the UI yet.
Yeah,
right, yeah. But it was no longer like a completely separate thing because like Honeycomb, they never even open sourced that while it was active. After they released the next version, they did. But the entire time you were buying Honeycomb devices, they didn't open source it, which was very strange. But there was the ICS era, and a couple of devices came out then that nobody really cared about. I think that was the first pad phone came out with ICS.
Yeah, which was like, okay, I remember when we saw this thing in MWC and everybody was like losing their shit. They're like, the future!
No, I remember that because I kind of had that reaction. Like, no, this is what I wanted. And I thought, like, wait, is this what I wanted? Maybe it isn't.
Wait, did I want a crappy Asus phone that also makes a crappy tablet? Oh, no, actually, I didn't.
It seemed so like science fiction when you first saw it. Like, this is what they do in movies, right? Like your phone is also a bigger screen tablet, and that's great. But then, like, well, what if I still want my phone?
I will say that if Google made a sort of pad phone screen thing that I could dock my Pixel into, I'd buy that in a heartbeat. Because like I don't need like a separate tablet or anything. It's a cool idea. Obviously, Asus didn't.
I mean, the whole idea of physically docking your phone into it, though, I think is a non-starter, even though it looks cool in a demo.
Yeah.
Cool. Google has clearly put all the eggs into the projection basket versus the physical connection.
Yeah. So, so Ice Cream Sandwich happened, and then like the first real Android tablet that everybody was excited about was the first Nexus 7.
And people bought a lot of those.
Yes,
I think
they were. They were super delayed. Like it took forever to get them shipped. And
And they
like,
did a lot of advertising on them too.
yeah, I mean, that device made sense because you could run a phone app on a 7-inch tablet and it didn't look totally ridiculous. And still to this day, that's a problem. Like if you have a big tablet and you open something that's obviously designed for a phone, it's like, why is this still happening?
Yeah, definitely. So the first one I remember, the dimple design on the back was very interesting.
Oh, on the 2012 7?
Yes, on the original one, yeah, with all the little dots. It was kind of like a I don't know.
Band-Aid.
Yes, it was a Band-Aid texture. Cody has one. You can't really see the dots from the webcam, unfortunately. But there's
I liked it, but it got so greasy.
it did get very
It got
greasy.
it got fingerprinty.
Also, the white one turned black over time.
Oh,
which
I'm
is
sure.
gross.
That's why I don't buy white phones.
Yeah,
Agreed.
it was a little yucky. So that was, I think, the first mainstream Android tablet in a legitimate way. Everything else at that point was largely an experiment.
Did we have the tab?
Well, the
notes
first
yet?
one
I thought
Google
that came
really
out.
had its hands on, because I kind of want to give that to the Kindle Fire. They nailed that pretty well for
For what
They
it was.
did.
I mean,
yeah.
it
I mean,
had
it was a terrible
limited appeal,
tablet,
though.
but it was a really terrible tablet. But
I mean, it was
it
cheap.
sold.
But then, like, the Nexus 7 was the same price. And that was
Right.
like a year, not even a year later, I think.
And so, as Jordan brings up, actually, prior to this even was the, excuse me, let's see, let me make sure here. Yeah.
The
So
Note 10.
prior to this was the Note 10.1, which was probably, I would say, the most ambitious Android tablet anyone had released at the time. It came out in late February of 2012. So several months before the Nexus 7 did. And it also ran Jelly Bean, I believe. Oh, no. Yeah,
Could've
no, it
been
ran
nice,
Jelly
yes.
Bean.
This is, yeah.
Wait, was it? Are you sure it didn't get updated to Jelly Bean? Because Jelly Bean came
Android
out.
4.1.2, upgradable to 4.4.2. It looks
Are
like,
you-
unless Wikipedia is wrong.
Maybe I feel like that can't be right because Jelly Bean, I think, came out for the Nexus 7.
Yeah, okay. It's possible this page is wrong. That doesn't make
What about-
sense to me
What does
either.
GSM Arena say?
Yeah, DSM Arena usually has what it came with, and
Jelly,
what is
Jelly
also
Bean
updated.
came out July 9th, 2012. So that
Okay,
would
so
have been
that's impossible. So this definitely ran an ice cream sandwich out of the box. But the original Note 10.1 did launch in February 2012. This was interesting because it was the first. I mean, so you got to remember, this was before the Microsoft Surface. It was before the iPad Pro, and I believe they worked with Wacom on the digitizer on this, and people were super impressed. And I remember Ron wrote the review of this, in which he put it in the trash at the end of the review. And the amount of shit he got for that review was just like never ending. Samsung's like, PR agency for America wanted like a private phone call with him with like the PR agency to like talk about the review and stuff, which I never heard what they talked about on that phone call, but it didn't change anything. I'll tell you that the review remained unaltered. So that's how that went down. And this was, I mean, though, people were very excited about this when this was announced because of the stylus. And I remember we got an email after Ron's review from a doctor who claimed that he used this in his work as a doctor, and it was very good for his doctor work. And Artem was like, "What do we do about this?" And then I don't think we did anything about it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that I don't think Samsung tablets at the time were HIPAA compliant. So I don't know if you should have been doing that.
I mean, maybe you just put in like a giant condom. I don't know.
okay, really quick, got to throw in, there was a stylus that beat that, or a tablet with a stylus that came first, the HTC Flyer.
Was
Oh,
that
oh,
was
God.
that was capacitive? Though.
That was
Pressure style.
I completely forgot that thing existed.
It was the
That
smart
was-
stylus. I can't remember exactly
that
how
thing
it
was
worked.
running. I think that was running Gingerbread.
That
It
was on
was.
Gingerbread, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Let's look this up here because
And
I'm
the
curious.
Flyer-
Which one came first, the Flyer or the Jetstream? Because one of them failed.
Flyer
miserably.
Jetstream was
first.
later.
Okay,
Yeah,
is
the
it
Jetstream.
okay? False alarm. Capacitive stylus.
Okay, yeah, no, but the stylus was extra too.
It was still
You had to buy
using
it for,
some
like,
technology
another-
to get better resolution out of a stylus than regular crappy
I think-
bubble
Hold on,
styluses.
I got to share this picture of the back of the
Ooh.
Flyer because it is glorious. Let me just pop this up on your viewfinder here.
Oh,
Oh, sweet HTC design. So svelte, so smooth.
The HTC
Actually,
device
going
looks
easy on-
exactly like that in some way.
They did.
I was going to
except
say the
small.
One X.
Okay, no, the stylus was an extra $80. $80.
Not
for
as
a
bad as the
passive
Apple Pencil.
stylus. Yeah, so that was good times. Good times for
HTC
everybody.
was just ahead of the time.
Although
Sorry,
kinda were.
HTC.
Hey, look, HTC made tablets nobody wanted before people realized they didn't want tablets.
Yeah, and also
Yeah.
I remember it was a notoriously expensive tablet. Like because Sprint was the one that
Yeah.
marketed primarily because
Yeah.
it had WiMAX, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, I remember that being a thing for a while there. Then they were just like trying to give them away after a while.
Well, give them away. It's still a really absurdly high price. though.
Yes, definitely. That was HTC's first foray into tablets, and they did not bother again until the Jetstream, which was an AT&T exclusive in the United States, and I am not convinced actually exists. I've seen one in person.
I played with one in an AT&T.
Really? I've never seen one in person, and as I recall, AT&T wanted some obscene amount of money for it.
It was like $800. Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. I've never seen this before.
Yeah, there's a very good reason because it existed for like 2 days.
They never sold more than that. That had to be such a limited sale. I'm guessing they must have pushed thousands, literally just thousands.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe even not that many. I mean,
I'm
honestly.
sure
Well-
the vast majority were probably sold to corporate customers who just bought something in bulk
Exactly,
because they
yes.
needed some device.
Well, they did later slash the price on that, and I think they dropped it by like $300. Like their first price reduction was by like $300. They knew they weren't getting anywhere with
So
it.
the Jetstream, if you're not familiar with it, it came out in September 2011, apparently. And unlike a lot of Honeycomb tablets of the era, it did not have a Tegra processor. It ran a Snapdragon S3 because I think all of them were LTE enabled. So you needed or maybe it wasn't LTE. It was mobile data enabled.
No,
I think it would have
GSM
been-
Arena says LTE.
Yeah, I think it
okay.
was LTE at the time.
Okay. Yeah, that was the thing. I remember like asking to like review one, and then HTC's like, maybe not. So that was HTC's second foray in tablets. I don't think until the Nexus 9 they made another tablet.
No, yeah,
Yeah,
that was a thing. Okay, we were up to the Nexus 7, and that was the thing that
2012.
like people liked, and they were like, hey, maybe this tablet thing could work. And then suddenly everybody was like, hey, we should make 7-inch tablets. And that was kind of an interesting time.
Oh yeah, everybody made
Yeah,
them.
the tabs.
True.
The next Galaxy Tab 7.0. I had one of those. That came out.
Yes,
I think
the
2013.
tabs. Samsung started to make not bad tablets at that point. They started to get like marginally passable, and then there were ones from Motorola never did a small tablet. They never got into that game. LG, I don't think really did either.
I think
They
their
made-
smallest
they
was the
made
8.3,
some-
wasn't it?
They
The
made
G-Pad?
some like really cheap small tablets, I think, that nobody
Okay.
paid attention to.
Yeah, they made like the G-Pad like 8 and then 8.3.
Oh,
this
here's
might have
the
been
8.3.
yeah.
I liked that tablet.
Good, actually. The one I have here is the one with LG software on it, so it was less good. But they also had the
The Google,
Google
Play
Experience.
Edition.
Yeah,
I
those-
had
yeah,
that one
Play
for a
Edition.
while.
Those were pretty popular. And this particular device was like the most popular Play Edition device there was.
Yeah. So then that was like the last time that we had the sort of the original tablet UI, because then like the next big release cycle is when I think we had the Nexus 10, and that's when they switched to the middle buttons, isn't it?
I never had one.
With
So.
4.2 was the switch. So yeah, that should be the Nexus 10.
Yes, that sounds right. And the Nexus 10 was well received, despite the fact that it was gigantic and shaped weird.
Wasn't it
Like the
really
shape of that
expensive,
tablet in
too?
retrospect, who wants an oblong tablet?
Squircle tablet.
Yeah, I didn't get that. Like, it's
Yeah,
no,
it
it's
was-
okay if it's just rectangular. I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
Was that
yeah,
the
it
time
was-
that Apple got that patent on square or rectangles for phones
Yeah,
and
I don't
tablets?
know how much that really influenced tablet design. I feel like
I
just
mean,
wanted to do
this was
something
it
weird.
was a Samsung
Well,
piece of hardware, so
yeah,
maybe they were being
Samsung
super
was the
paranoid at the
target.
time.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is like that one, it had that that kind of weird Exynos chip that turned out to be kind of crappy because it could never do
Yeah.
transparency in future versions of Android, so it always looked a little, funny.
Oh, and so Liam brings this up. We can't forget that the back panel on it detached, so you could attach
Yes.
a book cover to the Nexus 10.
Did that book? Yeah, the book cover did come out, right?
It took a long time, I think.
Yeah.
It did. I remember it was book cover watch for a while there, just waiting for that to come out.
Yeah.
I really liked the stock wallpaper on
Go
that
ahead.
tablet though. That was nice. That was my favorite thing about
The
it.
thing that didn't come out for the Nexus 10 was the dock. There
Yeah.
was supposed to be this
Oh,
desktop
yeah.
dock.
It had pogo pins.
Yeah, and they advertised the daylights out of that thing and somehow never sold it.
Sounds about right, though.
Pogo pins on phones and tablets were always a disappointment.
Didn't the 7 2012 have pogo pins?
Desktop dock for it. I really like the pogo pins on that, actually. It worked well. They make a lot of sense on tablets, less sense on phones.
Yeah, definitely. So the Nexus 10, that got quite a good lifespan out of it. I feel like that tablet got upgraded for quite a while.
Yeah, I think it was. It got to Lollipop.
Marshmallow.
Yeah.
Was it Lollipop or Marshmallow?
Lollipop got to 5.1.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
from
that's-
4.2 is quite a quantum leap.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, with its 2 gigs of RAM, which actually was pretty impressive for the time. So so when it came out, it was $399, which I think was a very fair price point.
Yeah. Oh,
It was
and the
definitely-
screen on that thing was
Yeah,
it was
it's
2560 by 1600.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even like by today's standards, that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a good tablet. If you wanted something that big, it was huge. Like I think it was massive. The other thing I remember from around this time is that I heard endless stories about this, and they bugged me, which is why I remember them. Acer is coming out with a $99 tablet, and everybody was losing their shit. They're like, "Oh my god, the $99 tablet is going to change everything." And
But it's Acer.
exactly. So it's the Iconia B1, which is
God.
one of the ugliest. I'm going to pull up the GSM Arena page here to show you guys, because it is, the bezels on this thing are like, mwah. Just take a look at that. Just take a look at that. But everybody was like, "Oh my god, it's going to change the industry."
That's a very nice picture frame.
Yeah. Everybody's like, "This is going to change the tablet industry forever." $99 tablets. Everybody's going to have a tablet. Tablets are the future, and then it came out and nobody bought the stupid fucking thing. Because it's
Got
durable.
enough space to prepare sushi on that thing, on just the bezels. Let's be fair. They had good reason to avoid it.
Yeah, I remember at CES, everybody was just like trying to get their hands on this thing and take videos with it and stuff. And it has a 2,700 milliamp hour battery.
Oh.
It's just total garbage. And then after that was shortly after, I think, the ultra cheap tablet thing started to kind of go downhill. And about let's see, it looks like, so 6 months after that was the next Google tablet announcement, which was the revised Nexus 7, which was, I think, very much perfection of the 7 tablet formula.
To this day, the best Android tablet overall, probably.
Yeah, and it had a good processor. It had the Snapdragon S4 Pro, the weird one, the APQ 8064, which like nothing else had, but 2 gigs of RAM, 16 or 32 gigabytes of storage, and the bezels were reduced, so it was a little easier to hold. Granted, the vertical bezels were still substantial, but the rest of it also had that notification LED at the bottom.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a nice device, and it wasn't too expensive. I think it started at $229 or $239 or something. Yeah, that was. I mean, it's just it was the same thing. Like, developers still hadn't made a lot of tablet optimized apps, so you could load a phone app on a 7-inch tablet, and it was okay.
I mean, even some of Google's apps weren't ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, and there's still people using the Nexus 7. To this day, I see people talking about it on the internet. There hasn't really been another tablet in that size range in that sort of that same sort of price point.
Well, and I think that's, after this comes out, I think that's when we hit the tablet kind of trough of activity where things, nobody knows what to make anymore. And Samsung starts, whereas Google had kind of dominated the narrative for the last year and a half there, Samsung starts to take over. And I think, let's see, what was the original Tab S? Let's take a look at that.
Yeah, because there was a 2014 edition of the Tab 10.1 or the Note 10.1.
I do remember that, and that was vastly improved.
Yeah.
But let's see here. I'm sorry, I don't have this handy. The Galaxy Tab series. So in 2013, so this is when the Galaxy Tab 3 came out. It was in 2013. And I remember, so this was also when the Tab 3 8.0 came out. And I think the Tab 3 8.0, probably not a lot of people remember this tablet. But let me just pull up a picture of it for everybody here.
I think
you'll immediately be able to tell. The design was, this was, you know.
Yeah, 2013 Samsung.
Yeah, 2013 Samsung, but the tiny bezels and everything, it was definitely ahead of the curve.
Yeah. I remember that being a really cool and easy to hold tablet.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I reviewed this.
Yeah. And so when Samsung was doing this with their tablets, I think that they kind of they started to dominate the conversation. And they also had they had the 7-inch version at this point, I believe, and they also had a 10.1 edition of the Tab 3, which I remember that being on a bunch of carriers. And then in 2014, we had the Tab 4s, and then we also had...
Yeah, they were releasing so many tablets. I'm just looking at the list. Like in 2014, they had like 8 tablets, 10 tablets.
Yeah, in 2014, actually, I think the most serious one we had here was, I'll just go ahead and share a screen of this. There's not much to see. This was the Tab Pro 8.4. So this was their first iPad competitor. This was the first time Samsung really took on Apple. And at this point, you know, Android really didn't have anything else in the premium tablet space because everybody decided they couldn't make money after the first round of Honeycomb tablets when everybody did try to make a premium tablet, and Samsung still went for it.
Because that was when Samsung was throwing everything at the wall to see what stuck.
They definitely were doing that at this point. And I remember I reviewed the Tab S 8.4. It was pretty good. I mean, as good as a tablet could be.
Yeah. I mean, and then I think from 2014 on, it's sort of the releases got a lot less frequent.
Definitely.
We had the Nexus 9, which was so
that was a
thing. Oh my goodness. I think it is very telling that we have heard nothing of NVIDIA's Denver core since then.
Oh yeah, that's done. I'm sure they've abandoned it completely.
They were so excited. So excited.
Oh, yeah.
Well, because that had been rumored. I mean, if you'd followed NVIDIA for a while, they'd been trying to do their own application processor for years.
Yeah, and
Denver was like this white whale.
They were first out of the gate with a 64-bit ARM core for Android, and then it was just not good.
It provided some special challenges, we'll say. And it was the challenges were bad. The Nexus 9 was Google's attempt with HTC to take on the iPad directly. It failed in every metric.
I remember after they announced that on the podcast, I think we were all talking about like how good it looked and how excited we were to get our hands on it.
Yeah.
And then, oh man, like the build quality was bad. It was slow. It just felt cheap. And it got fingerprinty, and then they released that sand-colored one that was like flesh tone, and I'm like, what are they even doing?
Yeah, and I do remember that a lot of people said the Nexus 9 sped up after it got a few OS updates. I think especially to Marshmallow.
It did get a little bit faster. Yeah, you know what's funny though? Okay, so that was a variant of the Tegra K1, that chip with the Denver cores. 3 months before that, NVIDIA released the Shield tablet that had a K1. That was still like made with like the regular 32-bit ARM reference cores, and that was a lot faster. That was a fast enough tablet that you could still use it today and not hate yourself. I think I probably have one in my drawer.
I still have one.
Place. But like that tablet, I mean, I feel like NVIDIA had a good selling point with all the gaming stuff, but they haven't made another one. So I don't know. Maybe they didn't really move as many as I would have assumed.
I almost bought one. That was on the top of my list, and then I never did.
It was I mean, it's clunky. I mean, it obviously was not. It's not a tablet you'd buy if you wanted to like take it around and like comfortably read a book with one hand. But if you wanted to play games on a tablet, like that was a good device.
It was definitely too heavy. I 100% agree with that. I still have one. I use it occasionally in the bedroom when my iPad's dead. And the stylus still works and everything too.
Yeah, I was
Surprisingly
bummed when
well.
they released the revamped K1 and they took out the stylus. I was like, man, that sucks.
Yeah, the stylus on that one works pretty well actually. It's all software based too.
It is, yeah, it is. Yeah, that was like a big thing for them. They're like, no, we're using the power of the K1 to do all the stylus stuff, and the palm rejection was kind of sketchy, but
yeah.
I mean, for the most part, it did work, and like the flip cover for that thing was awesome. I love that.
And then the only bad thing was when they're like, JK, return your tablet because the batteries can all explode.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what, though? They actually handled that really well, because you would just, like, there was a software update, and then you go into settings, and you would tap the battery thing, and it would tell you whether or not your tablet was going to explode.
I have an admission. I still have an explodey one.
No, you know what? And here's why. So when they first started doing the recall, you had to send the old tablet back. Like, they would send you a box and like form and everything. You send it back. A few months after that, I don't know. I had another one. I don't know where this other Shield tablet came from. Like, honestly, I have no clue. I found another Shield tablet in my office. I was like, I wonder if this one is defective. And it was. And I was like, okay, send me a new one, NVIDIA. And they just like sent me another one, and they never asked for that one back. So I still have a potentially explosive Shield tablet around here someplace.
Yeah. And I remember, so what they did, they released an OTA to gimp the charge speed, because that was perceived as part of the potential problem. So they charge real slow now if you've got an explodey one. But it still works fine. Haven't any problems. Hasn't exploded. Still gets software updates, which is cool.
Yeah.
So it's running 7.0 now, which is impressive. So that's nice.
But, the fact that NVIDIA has not released a tablet since the K1, I think, speaks volumes about the tablet marketplace.
Well, their approach originally with I remember at MWC they announced the tablet, and we took a meeting with them, and their whole thing was, we don't want to build the tablet. We want to work with all of our graphics card partners, who can then work with ODMs to build copies of it. That was their business model initially, which was real weird.
Didn't happen.
It made, because like Zotac made one, and I think EVGA made one.
Yeah, EVGA
one right here.
Yeah, exactly. A ton. So you had a few GPU partners that did it, and I don't know what NVIDIA's like logic was on that. It wasn't very good logic, but they had an idea. And then I think with the K1, they probably decided that the volume just wasn't there, and that's probably where they called it quits, which was sad because it was a competent tablet. It had problems, but as Android tablets go, very good value for money, especially on compute power to dollar.
Yeah. But the Nexus 9, HTC just had fire sales for those like every other week for a long time there. Yeah, because obviously they were not selling very well.
Yeah, the Nexus 9, I remember. So at the time the Nexus 9 came out, I had an iPad Air already, and I did the comparison post, like Nexus 9 versus iPad Air, and the Nexus 9 was worse in essentially every respect except multitasking, because this was before iOS got the proper like app previews and the multitasking interface, and it was just like a pain in the ass. But other than that, the iPad, like for 100 or for like, so what was the next? It was Nexus 9 $499 for the base one.
I think it was.
I thought it was. Really?
I don't recall.
I swear the base one started at $399, but
maybe it did. I think you're right. I think it was $399. Let me just go ahead and look this up here real quickie. $399.
But you don't understand. The iPad Air did not have the same cool origami case that could fold up in weird ways.
And that's the thing, is like I was excited for that case actually, and I got it. I was like, oh, it just sort of like touches the corner here and kind of sort of stays on. That doesn't seem very useful.
And there was like, oh my god, the keyboard case, and then
the keyboard case,
which was $130 or something like that, something ridiculous. Anyway, I remember getting this thing, and so the bezels were a lot better than the original iPad Air. That was one of the things it had up on it. But other than that, everything else was worse. The screen was worse. The light bleed was terrible. It was so slow. The number of my favorite thing was to like look at the Hangouts app for iOS versus one for Android.
Oh, that's
Hangouts
still
for
terrible.
iOS has a dedicated tablet interface. Hangouts for Android's like, nah, fuck it, man. Nobody cares.
It still doesn't. That's what aggravated me so
Yeah.
much when I was reviewing the ZenPad. When I open Hangouts and the conversation just takes up the full width of this 10-inch screen. I'm like, why are you like this, Google?
So true.
I don't understand.
And the screen, yeah, everything was worse, but the battery life was worse, and the build quality was like orders of magnitude worse.
Yeah.
I had one of the review units that before they started putting like the foam in the back to like stop the sponginess, and so like it was like,
did they? I didn't realize that was the thing they did.
Oh,
Because
yes.
the one that mine that I got when at launch, you sort of press in the middle and it would flex.
yes, lots of flex.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
That tablet was like had so much promise. Everybody was so excited for it, and then
And I mean, the degree to which we were disappointed, I think, sort of led to a lot of fatigue in the whole idea of an Android tablet.
definitely. And from there,
Which, let's be honest, that really did not help with the Pixel C coming out not that long later.
well, the Pixel C was 2015, so it was a year later.
Yeah,
and
it was.
Yeah, it was a year later, but
the Pixel C was weird for all sorts of different reasons. Like
Yeah,
the
it
Pixel
was.
C, good build quality, good performance. But like the
expensive.
question of why does it exist was harder to answer.
Yeah, see that device is interesting because we knew ahead of time that Google's intention was to make this a Chrome OS thing, but then they decided that wasn't going to happen. So they're like, let's just do it.
Because were Android apps ready for Chrome OS at that point? We had the few like Evernote
Not
and all
really.
those.
I mean, they had like the test thing you can install.
Yeah, they had the Arc platform that I think it was like Evernote.
Yeah, they had a beta of Arc, and so what happened with, if you're not familiar with Arc, it was a program it was like an initiative to run Android apps natively inside Chrome. But what happened with that, apparently, it was really hard, and Google's like, this isn't gonna work.
I remember Koch saying something how bad it was at the time.
Yeah,
like he complained about it a lot.
And so Project Arc ended up becoming Android apps for Chrome OS, the Play Store for Chrome OS, which is loosely related to Arc, but they changed a lot of the ways it works, and there's some compromises that have come with that versus a fully native solution. But that's probably a big part of why Pixel C launched with Android instead of Chrome
The cool
OS.
thing with Arc is that you could actually run Android apps on anything that ran Chrome. So like
Yes.
I think at one point I had the Android Twitter app on my Mac on Chrome because the Twitter app for Mac was terrible. But of course you can't do that with
Arc was very ambitious. It was a much more total conversion effort for Android apps into Chrome, but it didn't work. So the scope had to be reduced substantially.
Yeah. So have there really been any notable Android tablets since the Pixel C?
We've had a few Asus ones, but not really that I can remember.
Asus has been making some sort of mid-price Android tablets. The Tab S3 is coming out soon.
Oh yeah, didn't people like that Tab S2? I remember.
Oh
hearing
yeah,
good
but
things
that
on the
was
S2.
a couple years ago. I think that was
Was that late 2015?
I think that was 2015 when the Tab S2 came out.
I thought it was like November or December, so it was
But
pretty
I mean,
late.
The thing is, like, I have a Pixel C and I still use it. I like it insofar as I like using Android tablets, but I am also fully cognizant that I am by no means a regular consumer. I don't see why a regular person needs a $500 tablet at all.
I agree. So the thing is, for me, and a lot of people, I guess, who read AP know this. I've had I had an iPad Air, which I then sold when the iPad Air 2 came out, which was a significant upgrade because it's a lot faster and had the narrow bezels. I still have that iPad Air 2. It's still the only tablet I use. I use it for like Netflix and basic web browsing, basically, and that's really it. The battery life on it's kind of gone to crap because it's like 2.5 years old now, so it's a pretty old tablet. I have no desire to replace it. None.
Ted brings up something good in the chat about the Sony tablets. I forgot about the Z2.
Oh,
There's a good reason that you would
Let's
forget
go
about
further
those.
back. Let's talk about like the tablet P and the S.
Oh,
and
God.
one more.
Oh God, no! There's a good reason why you would forget about the Sony tablets because they did a terrible job of marketing them in the United States.
Yeah, there was
Most of them didn't even come out here.
I only remember seeing them because there's a Sony store at the really fancy mall up in Denver. That was the only place I could see that in the Z Ultra.
I remember the
didn't realize
Sony
that was a
stores.
thing.
They're all closed.
Yeah.
They closed. I'm pretty sure they're all gone now. I remember Sony stores. They were pretty cool. Because I remember testing a camera at one before I bought it.
That's where I first held the behemoth that was the Z Ultra.
Oh yeah, I remember when that came out. Everybody was like, "Oh my god, this phone! It's ginormous."
I think it was still smaller than the Fab 2 Pro though.
What? How big was the screen on that one?
6.4.
I think it's the same, isn't it?
Same, but it was felt like a
Probably
more
had
stealth
more
device.
bezel. Yeah. The Fab 2 Pro, like the thing is stupid
thing
heavy
is
though, because
rude.
it's just a slab of aluminum.
And all sensors in it. Yeah, that thing was ridiculous.
Yeah. And so in the meantime, since the Pixel C, so we had the Pixel C in 20 I guess that was 2015. So I would say there hasn't been a single truly notable Android tablet product since you had the new Samsung tablets at MWC this year, but those look boring. They're the same thing they've always been. Is there anything out there that runs Android on tablets compelling right now? That actually,
the ZenPads aren't too bad, but Zen UI is still.
But those are just.
good.
The ZenPads are just like a way to get a tablet running Android that's pretty cheap. Like, there's nothing really interesting about them.
That's what I test games out on. But
yeah, I feel like all you really need a tablet to be is like a big screen. That's all. I
prefer to game on a tablet than versus
as long as it's fast enough and it has a big, nice-looking screen. Like, that's all you really need. And that's not the kind of product that encourages people to upgrade every year or every 2 years,
or ever.
or ever. I don't know. But people just don't need to replace them all the time. Like with a phone, you carry it all the time. And if it's a little bit slow, it will annoy you constantly over the course of the day. And people just upgrade their phones. Like, that's the thing that everybody's come to terms with. But nobody feels the same way about their tablet, if they even have one anymore. Phones are big. A lot of people are fine with a phablet.
Exactly. So that's really, I think, what the paradigm shift was for tablets, was when phone screens started to get big and everybody's like, I can watch Netflix on this, so why buy a tablet? And I think that's where the shift really, that's where the buck really stopped for tablets.
Because Nexus 9 was 2014, right? With
Yes.
the Nexus 6. So Google released a 6-inch phone and the Nexus 9.
Yeah, the biggest Nexus phone, and then like a tablet right alongside it. That was an interesting choice.
Yeah, I just think that the big phones really destroyed a lot of the market for tablets. And even iPad sales started to decline in part because of this. And the other thing is laptops have gotten not shitty. That's been a huge factor, I think, in dethroning the tablet. Laptops have touchscreens. The batteries don't last in times best measured in minutes.
Yeah, and there's so many 2-in-1s.
And the 2-in-1 market has grown hugely. Yeah, definitely. And you know what? Laptops are much more portable, much lighter, much thinner. And that has really changed things a lot.
And the software situation on laptops is just infinitely better.
Yeah.
And
tablets, you're still, like you said earlier, you're stuck with a phone interface on a large screen, and it's, at least on Android, you are.
And Chromebooks are a thing now, which just makes it that much harder.
Chromebooks have almost definitely cannibalized the entire market for Android tablets. I don't have any hesitancy saying that. Yeah.
Okay. So you know what the top Android tablets are according to Amazon right now? They're the Galaxy Tab E, which is a $120 tablet. The Tab 4, which is a $180 tablet, and a bunch of like kids tablets, like the Leapfrog, the Navi stuff.
I sold a lot of those at Target when I worked.
So it's basically grandma needs to look at the photos on Facebook, or my kid needs a tablet because they're annoying.
And then if you go down just a little bit further, it's like Tab 4s and Tab S2 and stuff like that. And it's like, some people are buying those, but they're not buying enough of them that's going to be like a huge sustainable market.
When did the first Verizon Ellipsis 7 come out? Was that 2014?
I think it's 26. Yeah, maybe 15. It was 15 or 16.
I was
remember
still on
that.
Verizon at that point. I believe it was.
Yeah,
2014.
those were made by Quanta Computer, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Those
they're
were
not-
terrible.
I think the newest ones aren't terrible.
The newest ones are-
wise,
Yeah. The
but
first
I haven't
ones,
used one.
First ones, every time I'd go into a Verizon store, they'd be trying to sell those stupid tablets.
I'm sure the margins on them were great, so I'm
Yeah.
sure they had a lot of incentive to move them. Yeah, tablets became very commoditized.
Yeah, but but at the same time, like it's not the super cheap ones that are still like selling. Like there's not a $50 tablet that's like a big seller or like an $80 tablet. It's like $120, $180. They're a little bit more expensive maybe than like how cheap we thought they would get, because you can't make up on like the volume of something that costs that you're selling for 50 or $60. To make any kind of profit, you need to make a little bit more on each one because you're not going to sell millions of them.
Well, I've heard that Barnes & Noble has been selling their $50 Nook tablets pretty well. And then those $50.
Yeah, I thought those
they had to take those down. Yeah, I think they put them back up, but like they had some sort of software thing. I think it was the same thing that happened with the Blue phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, they pulled those because the chargers would fray.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there was
the cables
in theory
would fray.
could start
yeah,
fires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they did, that was right after the Note 7 stuff, so I don't think Barnes & Noble.
Yeah,
Noble
they
did that.
took it very seriously.
They were also there were rumors, legitimate rumors that they had a software change they intended to make anyway. So I who knows? It could have been the thing with Blue. It could have been. I heard some story were self-breaking those, so that could have been it. There was a lot of different stories going around about that. So there was probably some sort of software change they had to make too.
Yeah.
Yeah. What I think is interesting is Amazon is probably still in the best position to sell tablets now because
I'm sure they sell a ton of them too.
Because the Fire stuff, like they don't care if they don't make money on the hardware because they just want to get the ecosystem
exactly
in your face in as many ways as possible. Like they'll sell the $50 Fire at a loss probably just because they want you to buy stuff.
Definitely, and I'm sure Amazon still sells a boatload of those tablets. I've no doubt in my mind.
I think they also will still sell you a Fire HDX for a buttload of money.
Yeah, I remember. So actually, I went to the launch of the original Fire HDX in 2013 or something. I want to say, I think it was 12. They had it at, it was one of the rare events that happened in Los Angeles. This is why I remember it, because I was actually able to drive to it. And, it's this tiny event. There were maybe like 100 journalists in the audience total. It was really small. And Jeff Bezos got on stage talking about Fire HDX, blah, 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 blah. And I remember being kind of enamored with the design of the original HDXs. They were they had kind of a polygonal thing going on the back, these big crude shapes. I thought they were kind of cool. And then I used one and I was like, nah, I'm okay. Because of the especially limited app selection. They were also very slow. Like they were bad performers.
Okay, so really quick, I'm poking through the HDX and I can't find any variant that is actually available. In list of tablets, but I don't think they have any for sale.
I don't know if there are any X's. I thought there was just the Fire HD8 was the
one. Well, they have available. Yeah. Well, they have
the 8.9.
The 8 was just updated recently, but they still list. I guess they still list the HDX on their main Fire page. But I guess that's where they don't have anything to talk. They still list it. I don't know why they bother.
Yeah, there's a lot of different variants, including Wi-Fi only, Verizon 4G or AT&T 4G, plus 3 different size device or storage capacities, with or without special offers, because that's not obnoxious.
Yeah. But I think the success of the Fires really speaks to the fact that the Android tablet ecosystem just never really took off in a big way. The fact that Amazon can make a proprietary business out of selling Android tablets probably goes to show.
And this sort of takes us to a conversation we had a couple of weeks ago with like what Google is going to do with like large screen devices, and maybe that whole maybe Andromeda is a thing, maybe it's not, but like they got to do something because obviously tablets have not worked.
Yeah, I think, but you know what? I am still fine with Google not making a tablet. I have no desire for Google to make it. I know a lot of people want a new Nexus 7, but man, that form factor is like, it's deader than Jimmy Hoffa. Like that, we can't go back. We can't go back to like making apps for 7-inch tablets. It's never going to be a thing. I just
Yeah,
don't think
it's
there's that
kind of
demand.
true. The software situation is just too much of a it's a mess right now, and a big part of that, like so much of that, you can track back to when they released Honeycomb. Google was pushing the whole fragments API as a big solution. Like they were going to, this was how every Android app should be developed now. You'll basically build like your activity, and then it's going to be for a fragment, and then you'll be able to place them all around like big puzzle pieces. And it was a mess. Like developers hated it. Like inconsistencies. It was really inefficient. There was lots of like weird behavioral issues with fragments. So, I mean, they killed the software situation before tablets could even really take off. I to this day, I still think that's half the reason tablets kind of not completely in the spot that they're in, but a big like 50% of why they're as bad off as they are.
Yeah. And I think that even on the iOS side, we started to see the kind of tablet software stagnate. I mean, I can't remember the last time I heard of a new, iOS tablet app. It's just the same old stuff.
Apple is they're just trying to come up with any way to get people to keep buying iPads. They just really are they're panicking, I think, about
the most interesting thing that has happened to the iPad in like 5 years is picture-in-picture video. That's it.
Yeah.
Everything else is like, whatever.
But to be fair, you don't need to update these things that often. Like most people update their phones because big features are coming and adding to the device. But why do you need to update a tablet every 2 years?
I mean,
it's a big screen. You're using the same things you were using it for 2 years ago, and they're not slower.
If it still streams video and loads websites okay, then you probably are fine. That's all.
I guess in that respect, it has replaced laptops because people don't upgrade laptops for years at a time too.
I guess. I don't know. I feel like laptops have actually clawed back any kind of share tablets really took, because like I said, they don't suck so bad anymore.
Yeah, I mean, you can get like if you get a $600 or $700 Windows laptop now, it's actually a pretty good laptop.
Yeah, and even on Chrome OS, you spend $300-400 on a a Chromebook, you can get something
a $300 Chromebook is great if you just need to like poke around on the internet and like type, then like sure, get that.
Yeah, definitely.
And you can do Android apps on them now. Like, why not?
And I think probably the one nice thing to be said about the tablet is that the tablet's failings and successes are certainly what drove smartphones and laptops to evolve in ways that where tablets were successful, smartphones and laptops started to emulate that, especially laptops.
Yeah.
So tablets were instrumental in their own demise.
Tablets had to live and die to give new life to laptops.
They did. For convertible laptops to be a thing, the tablet had to exist.
Yeah,
hell, for the Surface Book to exist.
It's kind of what we saw with like you could go back to netbooks as an example. Like every few years, some new thing comes along, and everyone points at laptops like, this is the death of laptops. They're over with now.
Oh man!
And everyone hangs on to the thing for a year or two, and then it's like, wait a second, this actually sucks. Let's just go back to what we had. It's still better.
I bought a netbook in whatever year, like 2009, for $400, and at the time I was like, this is awesome. And a year later I was like, why did I buy it?
Right.
My first new laptop, like not one that was a handed down or whatever, that was already used for 5 years, was a netbook. And I think when I finally gave it up, it was a Hackintosh. I just kind of ran everything on there. I had Linux, Windows. I think it ended with Mac Snow Leopard on it. It was fun to play around with, but it was so slow. And the one thing that really bugged me was the screen, because it was 1024 by 600.
Yeah.
Oh jeez.
A lot of programs wouldn't even load right because all the stuff would be like flowing off the bottom of the.
I remember when the Windows 8 update came out, and everyone was, they were showing off Metro apps. They were like, you cannot run 2 Metro apps on the same screen if you don't have like at least a 1024 by 760. I was like, oh man, I gotta get a new laptop.
I'm surprised you were still using it at that.
That's impressive. Yeah. I only ever had one netbook, and it was solely to take exams because I needed a Windows machine to take exams with stupid software. I got this refurb Dell with like an 11.1 inch screen or something. Like, God, it was miserable. The most plasticky, awful laptop in the universe. It was, I hate netbooks. I hated netbooks. Netbooks are bad.
Yeah.
I know there's some people out there who love the form factor. Like, there's this kind of like, there's this group of people out there.
Well, I still think it's amusing to run, like what is essentially a full PC on a 10-inch screen, but then you actually use it and you're like, this is terrible. Why did anyone think this was a good idea?
Oh, exactly. That's like when the first netbooks came out, they couldn't play 720p video smoothly because the Atom chipsets were that bad.
Yeah.
Actually, Intel was probably more to blame for the shittiness of the netbook than anybody else.
And do you remember the when netbooks started coming out, it was Windows Vista era, but Vista wouldn't run on them.
Yeah, so they all had XP.
You could buy a new computer with XP in 2009, and it was like the most.
And that also helped the issue where Microsoft was like, "Please stop using XP. We need you to stop. Please use Windows 7," and no one would because this, they were trying to move everyone to Vista and 7 right around when netbooks exploded.
Yes, that was an issue. The RAM wasn't there, as I recall.
No, it really wasn't.
Yes.
Somewhat ironically, that was one of the things that got a lot of people to switch over to Linux. Weirdly effective driving force to get people onto Ubuntu.
Well, the first Asus EPC had like a special Linux distro, and I think some of them had, but then they all moved to Windows.
A couple of them did that. The pre-boot environment thing.
Yeah, my father-in-law had a netbook that he just constantly complained about, threw Ubuntu on it, and then I didn't stop hearing about it from how great it was after he threw Ubuntu on it. But yeah, Linux helped on those things. Helps on a lot of those lower power.
Well,
devices.
maybe Google just needs to put Ubuntu on tablets.
All right, we need an Android netbook stat. Apparently,
I can have Ubuntu Touch.
I think we have exhausted our discussion of Android tablets this week, considering we've moved on to netbooks at this point. So, thank you for listening, everybody, to the Android Police podcast. If you have feedback, you can email us at podcast@androidpolice.com. We love your feedback. I know that these topics go on a long time, so we'd love to hear, especially your thoughts on the new format and being a little less newsy. But yes, that wraps up another episode, and hopefully we'll be seeing you next week.
David, you didn't talk about the thermos.
I know. I think I'm gonna edit it in post. I remembered like 45 minutes in. I'm like, it's too late now.
I was thinking the same thing. Like at a certain point, we're so far into the history.
We need to have like like some sort of schedule thing so that we can like remind ourselves like as we go through this.
I'll just play an air horn 30 minutes in. Set it on a timer.
Start a timer at the beginning of the podcast or something.
It's a good idea. But yeah, all right, I'm going to stop the broadcast.